Good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael Steelman, Director of Alumni Career Management and Professional Networks at William & Mary, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, Confidence in the Coronavirus. Today's webinar is part of William & Mary's Alumni Webinar Series, and it is made possible by the support of the William & Mary Alumni Association. We seek to provide relevant programming for our lifelong commitment to our alumni and welcome any feedback and ideas for future programming. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we will notify all registrants once the recording is available online. Questions are welcome throughout today's presentation, and our presenter will answer as many questions as time will allow. If you roll over the bottom portion of the Zoom window, you should see a Q&A icon appear. Please use that feature to submit your questions. Throughout the webinar, I will monitor the questions and share them with our presenter at the end of his presentation. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest presenter today. Peter Atwater brings the experience of two highly successful careers to the stage: 25 years of innovative financial services leadership paired with 10 years of pioneering work in decision-making as a college professor and as a consultant to some of the world's largest money managers and hedge funds. In his first career on Wall Street, Atwater ran JP Morgan's asset-backed securities business, creating innovative and award-winning capital market solutions for companies like Ford Motor Credit. After becoming the treasurer of Bank One at age 35, he then served as a chief operating officer of the bank's asset management business. In 2001, he was asked by Jamie Dimon to integrate the private banking trust, brokerage, and investment banking management divisions serving high net worth individuals. As CEO of Bank One Private Client Services, Atwater oversaw an $850 million business with 2,400 employees across more than 100 offices. He then went on to serve as chief financial officer of startup credit card company, Juniper Financial, helping in the sale of the business of Barclays PLC. After helping hedge funds and institutional investors successfully navigate the financial crisis, Atwater turned his attention to decision-making. Today, he is widely recognized for his pioneering research connecting consumer confidence to decision-making. Atwater can be seen regularly on Bloomberg television, and he is quoted frequently by the financial media. Through his consulting firm, Financial Insights, Atwater works with corporate executives, professional investors, and policymakers to integrate confidence-driven decision-making into their operations. A member of Phi Beta Kappa, Atwater holds a BA in economics from William & Mary, where along with the University of Delaware, he serves as an adjunct professor. We are truly delighted to have Peter join us this afternoon to share his advice and expertise with the William & Mary community. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Michael. I want to get the slides to move forward just a second. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, so I teach a class at William & Mary, a Col 150 class called Confidence in Decision Making. And at its core is the notion that we act as we feel. And while the class is housed in the economics department, we look at everything from political, social, cultural, as well as financial and economic decisions. At their core, they all tie to our level of confidence. And I want to spend a moment just talking about confidence and what it is, because what I find over and over is it's a word we use a lot, but nobody really knows what it means. In fact, when I ask my students every year, they can't tell me what confidence is, but often these are the folks that come up. You know, LeBron, Beyonce, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, they think that these people are confident. The reality is that confidence is nothing about performing, whether it's on the stage or on the basketball court. Confidence is really cognitive. It's how our brain is processing information and how we think. When our confidence is high, for our brain, it sort of looks like this. It's like being a driver on a clear road on a clear day, and it's straight, very little use for our brains. I like to think of it as our brain is in the staples mode with the easy button. As our confidence falls, though, our brain starts to struggle, and you see cognitive strain, take off and it sort of looks like this. And when confidence is really low, this is what our brain looks like in terms of trying to process an overwhelming amount of information. Confidence is a feeling that we have about how we perceive ourselves handling the future. And that's a mouthful. So I want to tackle a couple of points in this. First off, confidence is entirely perception-based. There are no facts when it comes to confidence. We don't make the decision to put on a sweater because it's 54 degrees. We make the decision because we're cold. And that's really how confidence works. It's all about perceptions. And the two critical perceptions for confidence relate to our perception of certainty and control. And we are confident. Because of these two variables, I think it's really helpful to be able to then map our own behavior. And I use a tool that I developed called the Confidence Quadrant. Along the x-axis, you have low and high certainty. Along the y-axis, you have low and high control. Our comfort zone, where we have high certainty and high control, is the place that we love to be. This is where we feel confident. And we most often really don't want to leave it. Our brain is easy, it's relaxed, it's very comfortable. And when confidence falls, though, we fall into what I think of as our discomfort zone, environments of low certainty and low control. Again, we start to strain cognitively to understand the world around us. When confidence is really low, as it is right now, we enter what I call the trauma zone. These are environments like an emergency room in the hospital, where we have no certainty and no control. So at the other end of the spectrum is what I think of as the fearless zone, that space where we feel total certainty and total control, sort of like we feel when we get ready to jump out of an airplane, that sense of invincibility. I want to just touch on the other quadrants because they're relevant, but each of them is different. The lower right-hand box is environments of high certainty and low control. That characterizes an airplane. And there you need extremely high certainty, given our innate vulnerability and powerlessness, in order to get on an airplane. I'd also note that environments of prison have those same characteristics. Environments of high control, low certainty, that's a casino. That's buying a lottery ticket. We're choosing to take action. The outcome, though, is either statistically based or we have no idea. So why I like this chart is that we can map how we move in time through life. And I just want to give an example. So let's say you decided you were going to go on a plane ride. Well, you'd buy a ticket feeling very comfortable and confident about the trip. You'd get on the airplane, and if you're an anxious flyer, then chances are your confidence is starting to fall. You start taxiing down the runway, confidence falls, you take off, and for many people, that sense of powerlessness really takes hold. Things get rough for people in terms of confidence when there's turbulence. And if you've ever experienced it, when lightning is rolling down the aisle, well, that's pretty well defines a traumatic moment where confidence is extremely low and you have no certainty and no control. In an airplane, thankfully, we start to head back and get to the gate, and by the time we're off the airplane, our confidence has been restored, that sense of certainty and control. This is not too dissimilar from what you'd experience on a roller coaster. We all know, though, that in our lives, we have been in every one of these different quadrants at different points. Nobody gets to adulthood without spending some time in that low certainty, low control environment. Why this matters is because it allows us to start to look at how we're feeling in the current environment. And I'd offer that just a few months ago, we were feeling really invincible. I saw that in terms of economic statistics, where fewer than 10% of Americans were worried about the economy, the lowest in the time period that Gallup has been surveying Americans. We saw it in terms of retail investors getting into the stock market in a big way. We also saw it in the White House. President's mood mirrors the confidence of the electorate. And so that sense of invincibility we could see in multiple dimensions simultaneously. So I think that it's important to recognize that just a few months ago, we were very high up in that upper right-hand corner, feeling very good about the economy, very good at our prospects for the future, lots of certainty and lots of control. And the problem with that is that that invincible moment has a lot of fragility. As I said on Marketplace the other day, confidence is like a Lego tower. It takes a long time to build, but once it's really tall, it's incredibly vulnerable and fragile. And so as folks may have seen on Lego Masters recently, the taller the tower, the easier it tips over. And that's really true as well with our level of confidence. And when we are extremely confident, we underappreciate risks. And that's something I'm going to tie back to, because I think the opposite is true when we're in environments as we are today. So if there's a starting point just a couple of months ago, I would put us there. Since then, we've seen narratives change. One of the narratives that took hold was that the virus was contained in China. And from a confidence perspective, that sense of containment, particularly far away, was really important. Since then, though, we've seen confidence fall as our perceptions of the virus became closer and closer. First, we heard that multinational corporations were affected, companies like Starbucks. Then investors in those companies were impacted. The big change occurred when people saw that the virus was in Italy, and we felt that proximity to the virus had really changed dramatically. Suddenly it was feeling very close. One of the things that I've noticed with anxiety is that when threats move psychologically from being far away from us to being very close, our anxiety level changes dramatically. In fact, almost asymptotically, where the closer it gets, we go from feeling anxious to feeling quite panicked about it. And so I think what we've seen in the last couple of weeks has been this dramatic decline in psychological distance, where the virus was contained in China, far away, to being in Italy. And then suddenly we started to see it shift even more as it was viewed as coming to America, it's in America, and now we're at a place where the virus is near me. And so we've seen this dramatic tension and outright panic. None of that is surprising, given the existential threat that the virus represents and our natural reaction to threats when they shrink in terms of psychological distance. And so the result is that we've gone from feeling invincible to feeling intensely vulnerable very, very quickly. It's akin to being mugged, where it's sudden and involuntary. And this is naturally associated with traumatic events. And so we have been, in many cases, traumatized by the outbreak. The outbreak was far away. And I want to show that this spike in terms of anxiety and the shrinkage of psychological distance has been mirrored really well elsewhere. I turned that chart, a mirror image of it, and you can see it in terms of our Google searches for coronavirus symptoms. That's what this top chart is. You can also see it in terms of, as psychological distance shrank, what's happened to the stock market. That same decline in confidence being reflected, I think, really accurately in the financial markets. So we are here today in feeling intensely vulnerable. And you see that in terms of the headlines, that sense that the worst is still yet to come. You saw it last night in the president's remarks that this could be a hell of a bad 2 weeks. And the media is reinforcing that sense of uncertainty and vulnerability. So in this space where we are today, I think there's some important things for us to recognize. These are the moments, and we've started to see these already, where you see sweeping policymaker responses, where you see massive closures, non-believers capitulate. And I'm sharing these because these were things that we identified in our class several weeks, if not more than a month ago, based on if confidence fell, what would happen as a result. And so our behaviors are highly predictable when we move from one location on the quadrant to another. That sense too today, now that the crowd believes that the worst is yet to come, and you can see people acting on it. Again, our behaviors confirm and reflect our level of confidence. When I started this presentation, these were the lines that I drew and the quadrant, dividing the quadrant into equal squares. The reality, though, is quite different. When we're lacking confidence, when we're extremely confident, our perception of the world around us looks like this. We view most of our world to be highly certain, and we feel equally highly confident in terms of our level of control. Again, this is how somebody who's feeling invincible sees the world around him. When confidence is really low, as it is today, the reverse takes hold. And so we have a high sense of uncertainty, a high sense of powerlessness. This becomes important because our actions reflect our view of the world around us. And one of the things that I found is that when we feel this intense vulnerability, as we do today, our thinking changes. And our thinking becomes all about me here now. Those are the only things we care about. And so our decision making naturally mirrors this highly cognitively strained ability that we have, low confidence, and the things that matter to us are very different from when we have high confidence. We're focusing on things today that are essential, that are familiar, that are predictable, that have the greatest impact on us. And so all of our choices reflect that now. That's in contrast, for example, when just a few months ago, when we were in a very us everywhere forever mode. We were trying to tackle climate change. We were taking on space travel. And when we're extremely confident, we embrace things that are abstract, things that are unpredictable. These are the environments of sort of that go west young man, where we love innovative technology. There's been a dramatic shift in the last couple of months. One of the things that I noticed early on was that shift was being reflected in the stock market. You saw early on during the crisis, lots of me here now thinking as stocks like Domino's Pizza took off, and Clorox, cleaning products, at the expense of us everywhere forever companies. The travel industry is really a manifestation of that us everywhere forever thinking. And so we are in extreme me here now versus us everywhere forever thinking mode. And the intensity of that thinking is profound. And so there's things that become very difficult for us in this environment. It's hard for us to be generous, whether that's socially, financially. It is counter to the me here now thinking. Same thing with inclusivity. We are naturally xenophobic, racist, our worst selves come out. Things that look and act different from us, we naturally fear when we have low confidence. We don't plan. We're very reactive. Thinking strategically is hard. And we don't handle complexity well. We want things in bite size, easy to understand, make it simple. Our feelings right now, we all feel unprepared, inexperienced, anxious, and overwhelmed. And those are natural feelings for where we are. We also feel like we're taking 2 steps forwards and 3 steps back. Everything in this environment is a struggle. And again, there's no surprise to that. That is what comes with being in this lower left-hand quadrant. One of the things I want to emphasize is you can't be confident here. And I think that folks who feel like they need to be confident, that they're trying to be confident, when we're in this lower left-hand quadrant, when we perceive the world to look like this, we can't be confident. And so trying to be confident is unrealistic. Things are new, unexpected, we're unprepared, they're unfamiliar. When I talk about this with my class, I always talk about this as being the freshman year. those environments where we're not confident. By senior year, though, those things that were stressing us out have become a whole lot less worrisome to us because we've adapted. And so one of the things that I think is important right now is to recognize that we are feeling underconfident and that this perception is not likely to last long. Panic is hard to sustain. Crises tend to be very short-lived. And so just to remember that, this may go on for several months, but it is not going to be forever. The other thing about this is we've all been here before. It may not look like this and maybe in different ways, but as I said, you don't get to adulthood without spending time, if you've been injured, if you've had a medical emergency. There are lots of experiences in life that bring us to this environment of low certainty and low control. But what we learn about them is that these are the environments where we're resilient. And so while we may not be comfortable here, one of the things that I think we underestimate, woefully underestimate in fact, is our resilience. And this is an environment where we are resilient. You can see it already. I see it at William and Mary. I see it in our community around us. There is a resilience to us that is being demonstrated every day. And a lot of that resilience is now manifesting in the fact that we are adapting. These are the places where we naturally adapt. We hate uncertainty. We hate powerlessness, and we will do whatever it takes to adapt. And so what I'm seeing, I think what everybody around us is now seeing, is what I call heroic adaption, where we have people who are reducing vulnerability in the medical space, in the food space, and lots of our critical needs where adaptation is happening because it has to happen. And I think that kind of adaptation is something we need to be thinking about for ourselves as we start to move forward. One of the things I really want to emphasize is to please don't extrapolate. One of the dangers, as I said, is we have this sense that the worst is yet to come. At the very low, whether it's happened or will soon happen, I can assure you that that is what everybody is going to believe to be the case, that the worst is yet to come. I think it's really important to recognize that the media follows us. The media is nothing like a giant mirror that is being positioned to reflect how we feel. The media doesn't cause us to feel better or worse. It reflects where we are. If you're in the media business, you're trying to put television shows, news, magazines, newspapers in front of readers so that they absorb them, so that they consume them. There has to be resonance with mood. One of the things that I would say is if you are watching the news over and over and over today, it's no different from just listening to Adele rolling in the deep over and over during a breakup. The best thing you can do today is limit your consumption of the news to what you need to critically move forward. The other thing I think you need to be careful about is comparison. Because when we're in this lower left-hand quadrant, we don't compare ourselves nicely. And let me show you exactly what I mean. So this is a chart of Google searches for anxiety. And so they do interday charts. This is from a couple of months ago, but I can assure you it still applies today. One of the things you'll notice is that every night, at the middle of the night, between 1 and 2 in the morning, our searches for anxiety peak. And I've looked at this on Christmas and Thanksgiving and Halloween, and you name the day, it all looks the same. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but in the middle of the night, we search for the words anxiety. But you'll notice what else we search for right after that. Am I fat? Am I stupid? Am I ugly? When we are feeling anxious, what I call our mean voices come out. Our mean voice is going to remind us of what we're not, what we lack, where we feel vulnerable. All it's doing is reinforcing that sense of intense vulnerability. And so I encourage you to ignore your own mean voice and to recognize that it's lying to you in the same way your very, very nice voice was lying to you up here as well. We need to just temper the messaging that we're sending. The other thing I think we need to recognize is that a few months ago, we were naturally overconfident. And now we're naturally underconfident. This is important because when we are overconfident, things seem better than they really are. Now that we're underconfident, things are going to seem worse than they really are. And so I love the term underconfidence because I think it really reflects where we are today. We are seeing the world around us and feeling as if not only is the virus bad, but increasingly everything is bad and worrisome around us. That is largely a misconception. Our vulnerability is real, but seeing everything as being worse than it is, I think is a worrisome danger. So what can we do about it? One of the things that I think is really important is community, and to recognize that physical distance doesn't equal social distance, and we need to be mindful and to try to maintain social closeness, even though many people are quarantining and self-isolating now. The other thing, and this is very counterintuitive, is to help other people. And one of the things that my work has found is that helping other people is as good from a confidence perspective for the helper as it is for the recipient of the help. Helping is all about demonstrating where we have control, where we have certainty. And so to the extent that you're feeling vulnerable, one of the best things you can do, one of the best things we can do, is to try and get out and help others in ways that we can. The other thing that I think is important is to change the narrative. I think many people are looking at this environment today as the end. And in my work, I would note that confidence moves in very clear, regular cycles. And crises, such as the one that we're experiencing, always occur near lows of confidence. And so crises both reflect and mirror our lack of confidence. And so it's very natural for us to perceive these environments as being the end. But I note that when it comes to confidence and the cycle of confidence, this is really the beginning as well. And so one of the challenges in adapting is both grieving our perception of things as the end and learning how to move forward, being resilient in the face of uncertainty as we also experience a beginning. And so I want to talk about this environment not just as an experience of low confidence and what has happened as a result of the virus, but as a beginning, because I think it's not too soon to start to contemplate what's ahead. I talked about the importance of helping others and how that restores confidence. And I think what we're seeing today is the demonstration of that in the heroic efforts of people in our medical community and in our food community who are, to me, the heroic helpers, who are helping to sustain and to address the outbreak. One of the things that I think defines all of them is that these are people who see a problem and solve a problem. And I think that we need to think about that more broadly, because seeing and solving a problem is really entrepreneurship. It's really trying to address a problem, coming up with a solution, and being entrepreneurial and creative about what do we do about it. And so I'm already starting to see individuals that I think of as now heroic entrepreneurs, people who are not just reacting to the outbreak, but who are beginning to think about, so what's likely to happen? What is this going to look like in 3 or 6 months? How do we begin to solve problems today so that when things change, we are ready for them and we've mitigated issues? And so I think of heroic entrepreneurs as people who are seeing a problem, solving a problem, and doing it over and over. I would offer that these are foundations for the next generation of businesses, companies and organizations and aspects even within the government, where you're going to see heroic entrepreneurs lead us in terms of what's important what's likely to be opportunity ahead. I think as an overriding theme for the next several years, potentially, is addressing vulnerability. I think it's important to recognize that coming out of this crisis, we will have experienced in the United States 3 major vulnerability attacks: 9/11, the housing crisis, and now this crisis. Vulnerability is likely to be a major issue as we start to move ahead. And so I think people who are capable of addressing our core vulnerabilities coming out of this will be not only helpful, but have incredible opportunities. I've already started to talk about this in terms of the just-in-case economy. If you think about what we've experienced until recently, that was the just-in-time economy. That was being able to get things from anywhere in the world to where we needed them today. Coming out of this, I think there's going to be a lot of concern and questioning as to whether we took too much risk in the just-in-time economy, and therefore what might be more appropriate are things that are just in case. So I want to leave you with a couple of examples of where I can imagine opportunity and beginning to see it already. The first is in the whole question of restocking. What's become clear already is people feel vulnerable because of scarcity. And so I think that individuals and organizations who can look perceptively and insightfully at issues of scarcity and find ways to address those going forward. I can see, for example, in the world of remodeling, people dramatically changing things like pantry sizes and what you need in order to feel more prepared. I can see in the business space the need for more domestic warehousing, community warehouses, hospitals and other organizations rethinking what do they need in terms of critical supplies going forward. Another area is in the area of repair. I think that this experience, particularly as the third one in 20 years, the notion of buying new is likely to be challenged. And so I anticipate that there will be a dramatic shift in preferences to repairs. And people will be looking for people, whether it's cars, washing machines, computers. The whole world of repair has been under-resourced given our until recent consumer buying behavior. I think going forward, people will be rethinking that. And as a result, there'll be a much greater demand for repair. Another one is in the area of remediation. The folks who handle climate change don't like what I have to say about our thoughts there, because I think that our willingness and ability and desire to tackle climate change has really changed in the last couple of weeks. And I think as a result, what we're likely to see, instead of trying to tackle climate change, is trying to tackle the consequences of an unaddressed climate change environment. And so there I can see massive remediation efforts coming. And to the extent that there's high unemployment, these massive remediation efforts are likely to help address the need to put people back to work. We don't think about things like the Hoover Dam as being a remediation project, but if you go back and look at history, that's exactly what it was. And so I think we need to anticipate and envision coming out of this large-scale programs that are intended to address remediation, and remediation being far broader a topic than just climate change, other areas of environmental remediation as well. Finally, I think the whole area of redundancy is a place where corporations, individuals, the government is going to have to do a massive rethink after this. And so again, being able to help individuals, organizations, and policymakers to address redundancy, I think will be another opportunity for entrepreneurs ahead. Two other things I just want to emphasize as we move forward. The skills of leadership have changed dramatically in the last couple of months. And so to those of you in the William and Mary community who are leaders, whether it's in industry, in government, in your community, the traits that are so important right now: empathy, resilience, realism, creativity. These are traits that you're already seeing a natural preference for. Folks have talked a lot about the real dramatic change in sentiment towards many of our nation's governors. And what I see as an observer looking at them is how they have really adopted and adapted to the crisis leadership environment traits. Empathy, realism, resilience, and creativity are on lots of, very visible today. Finally, I think that these are environments where our communication needs to change. In addition to empathy, when we're talking to people in environments of crisis, our messages need to be immediate, authentic, simple, complete, and transparent. Particularly, I can't emphasize enough the importance of simple. When we're in me here now mode, I don't think any of us have a cognitive bandwidth more than maybe an elementary school child. Simple is something that really matters in terms of our solutions and our messaging today. Finally, this is counterintuitive for many leaders, but these are environments where using I, not we, is better. I says to your audience that I'm accountable. I'm taking charge of this. I've got this. And so as leaders, you want to be very clear to the folks that you're trying to lead that you are accountable and responsible. As I said, we're in that environment in that lower left-hand corner that feels like lightning is rolling down the aisle. It feels like this is the end. But crises mark lows in confidence. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish. I don't believe that things can't and won't get worse. I think we need to be prepared for that. But I think we need to recognize that crises come at lows in confidence, and that as profound and as long-lasting as this may feel as we go through it, the reality is, I think, certain to be that in the next several months, the bottom is likely to be in place. And so I think it's not too early for us to start to think about what does this look like on the other side. That in addition to being an end, this is a beginning. And I have to say, I'm really proud of so many individuals and organizations, the college especially, the leadership that we've seen across campus in transforming from what we thought was a long environment of teaching in the classroom. All of us as faculty members are beginning to learn how to handle online classes. I can't say we wanted to adapt, but we're learning. And as I've said to my students, we're learning how to ride a bicycle in a hurricane. But we're moving forward. And I can't emphasize enough how much I see that in our world around us already. Just one last thing. As I said, crises happen at the bottom. Lehman Brothers, the collapse at the bottom of the banking crisis, that marked the low. And so we need to just recognize crises are the bottom, not the beginning. This is an environment where people, if you can be strategic in your thinking, have opportunities to be heroic entrepreneurs, helping others, addressing vulnerability. I can't emphasize enough the opportunities that exist if you just start to look around. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions.
Well, Peter, I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of us in the William & Mary community. As we have stated before, in difficult periods like this, we are reminded of the resilience and strength of our compassion of our community. And you and Janet are an example of the quintessential tribe family member that really has given of their time, talent, and treasure throughout their relationship with William & Mary. And we are truly blessed to have your expertise today and help us move forward and build a great community moving forward as we get through this together, and help be innovative for the better of our communities as a globe, as a nation together. So thank you on behalf of all of us. We do have some questions, and I want to remind people that they can easily just open the Q&A box on the bottom of the Zoom window and type in a question, and I'll try my best to get to it. And Before we conclude, I'm sure Peter will share some ways that you can follow him because he has been daily staying on top of this and certainly been featured in many of our leading journalistic pieces on this topic today. But as you mentioned in the confidence realm, do you think that the confidence of our president, governors, and other public leaders reflect the underlying confidence of the public and drive the level of confidence of the public, or both? And if both, what is the balance between reflecting and driving the public confidence?
So I would say that the further away you get from local, if I'm looking at who's driving and who's following, what I'm seeing is, and this is true in crises more broadly, local leaders are leading because they're having to adapt first. It's happening to them, it's happening to people around them. They're seeing it, they're feeling it. And so I think that what we're watching is a major reversal in terms of what we think of in terms of leadership. This is an environment where local leaders, they're leading. You get to governors, they're probably mirroring where we are. You get to the president, and I say this not as a partisan comment, I would say that the same thing if the president were Democrat today, they're following. It takes a lot of things to happen before things resonate on a national level. And I think when you get to global organizations like the World Health Organization, they're really lagging. And I think it's not surprising then that organizations like the World Health Organization have really lost their relevance in this situation. This is an environment of intense me here now, and those who are closest to that energy are the ones who are leading. The folks that I think who are truly leading leaders today are in our hospitals.
Thank you. And how are you mentioned this at the end there about your role as a professor. How are you adapting your class with your online learning experience and to assist your students with their confidence during this?
So I'm trying very hard to recognize that every one of them has probably 3 or 4, 5 or 6 other things happening in their lives now beyond class. And so the fact that we're doing things online, I think is really fabulous because they don't have to show up for class. Everything that I teach is videoed. Every test now is take home. And so I'm trying to emphasize to them that we're going to accommodate to their needs, to where they are in this. And so I think the other aspect is students now have the availability to take classes pass fail. I don't think they should be under the stress of trying to achieve A's in this environment. As I said, this is learning to ride a bicycle in a hurricane. And so I think one of the things that I'm really proud of among our faculty and the administration is the level of compassion and the degree to which my colleagues are, we're trying to put the student first through this.
Great. And it's a learning experience for all of us, right? I mean, as you are not accustomed to the classroom online, it is you're doing it as well. Is there a way to keep a realistic assessment of risk as confidence increases?
So as confidence increases, it gets hard. I think that if I think of extreme underconfidence and extreme overconfidence, I think they have magnetism to them. I'm a child of the 60s and the space race. And so I think of the gravitational pull between the Earth and the moon. And I think that those are mirrored in confidence, that it's very hard when confidence is low to pull ourselves, from that. And so when confidence rises, then we become naturally sucked into being overconfident. And so what I try to do and what I encourage students and others to do is keep those grids square. Recognize that the world hasn't changed. What really changes in these environments is our perceptions of the world. And so the world is no more risky, no less risky than it's ever been. And so we just need to recognize how far have our perceptions deviated from that. And I think a couple of months ago, our perceptions deviated wildly optimistically. And I think we are in an environment now where we're becoming wildly pessimistic. And I think we are as likely to be wrong in this environment as we were just a couple of months ago.
So, being the proud parent of two recent grad and a soon-to-be graduate, what advice would you give the class of 2020? Of how to best approach their job search today, the outlook of their for real world entrance, and what would you like to share to that audience?
So, if I can, I put up a little while ago that sine curve for confidence, and one of the things that I think is important for the class of 2020 is that most of them were born around the very top of that sine curve. If I go back and think about when was America most confident, it was probably in the late 1990s. That's at least what the survey data that I have from many people would suggest. And so their upbringing, their adolescence has really occurred in that downward slope of confidence. And so as a result, I see this in the anxiety levels of students, they're naturally risk averse. And yet, when I think about it, this is a time to be extraordinary risk takers. That, the overestimation of risk today is so great that this is the time to be entrepreneurial, to take risks and to try things that you wouldn't otherwise do, because the cycle is going to turn, and all of that anxiety and apprehension that you've been raised with is not likely to last into the future.
That is terrific advice, and I am looking forward to the amazing innovations that William & Mary graduates will be doing, as well as others around the world, things that we never thought of today that will be inspired and hopefully make our world even better from all of this. And I just want to, I have a few more questions, maybe one more here, and if there's more, please do type them in. But I do want to just remind people that hopefully you received Marilyn Midget's email last week that went to all alumni. We are not hosting any in-person events, not until even June 10th at the earliest after that. But what we are doing is weekly events online, not just through the Alumni Association, but anything through the School of Education, School of Law, School of Business, wherever we can promote that to our community. There's many things going on in addition to the professors doing their teaching. We're doing a lot for our graduates out there, and we want to keep you engaged, and we want you to realize that you should stay connected with William & Mary as a great community to look to each other for your support, for your needs right now. If you haven't already joined the switchboard, it's a place where you can ask and offer one another for support, whether it's, just use it as you need right now. We also have great Facebook groups and regions that could be used, and our LinkedIn groups are very active and have the messaging ability to connect with one another. We want you to look to each other as your support through all this together, and that you're not alone, that we're all here together. And so these events, I'm doing this as a little plug for the future that we have. We have tomorrow, we have our Tribe Thursday virtually. So if you're looking for just a social connection point, we'll be, bring a beverage, whatever choice of beverage you wish, to your computer screen. It could be coffee or lunchtime soda if you need it wherever you are in the world at that time. And we'll put you into the little groups, so you'll meet through Zoom, 6 or 7 people each room, and then we also have the online networking events on Tuesdays for the next few weeks, so please sign up for those and text chat around the world. We've invited students to those as well, so that's a great way to help the current students that we've been talking a little bit about, as well as these webinars we will continue. We'll have programming. We have some Q&A sessions that will be less presentation and more conversation coming up as well in the weeks ahead. So stay tuned to the virtual engagement opportunities page on wmalumni.com. And so that's my little plug there. Peter, is there anything that you would like to share before I ask my last question as far as ways to stay engaged with your perspective on this all?
No, I would just, I'm not trying to be Pollyannish in terms of what's likely to be ahead in the immediate term, but I really can't emphasize enough that this is a crisis that will, like all crises, last a finite period of time. And if we can begin to think about how we adapt and how we address the vulnerabilities of the people around us, that is what's going to provide the basis for recovery from here.
So I love your outlook on all of this. You gave the reality, and you've given us some great hope and encourage, hopefully, resilience among all of us in a way that we all need. We need that support. There's a couple questions. I think we do have some time, so I'm going to ask this next one before my final one. But do you see online education becoming more of a mainstay of future of learning from all of this? Can you comment on how online learning might change from the local elementary level and to high school level, as well as to the college level in the years ahead?
Yeah, I think that online learning, we all had to jump in the pool to learn how to swim. I think that coming out of this experience, there's going to be a lot of reflection on what worked, what was powerful in this, where did students learn better, differently from what had been going on before. And I can see organizations, including William and Mary, look to incorporate that into things in the future. The challenge, what I feel is that, we need to figure out how we maintain that social closeness that comes along with an on-campus experience. But at the same time, watching as young minds are adapting to this, we need to recognize that this is going to change education forever. I don't know how yet, but again, it comes back to how do we use it to address vulnerability and to really help people to boost confidence as a result.
Certainly the hybrid of both will be where we'll sort of see it develop. And Peter and I were actually joking before we made this live. I was dealing with my 4-year-old daughter's Zoom circle time with her Montessori class. So, it is at all levels happening. And, I think it will certainly change a lot of things on how we teach and how people connect with one another. But I hope that still, we all know that the in-person is the most enjoyable and most rewarding. And, I think the brick and mortar classroom hopefully will still stay strong, but there are online ways to utilize technology from all this that we're all learning, and how that will be integrated will be fascinating. So with the sort of last question here, I believe, let me just make sure if there's any other questions. I think this is going to be our last one, which is, I always like to have a neat last one. So sort of what are you doing, Peter, during all of this to keep your confidence going? And I know you've alluded to a little bit of how you perceive, but sort of what is your routine like to get through this being at home?
Well, I'm like everybody else, having to remind myself that this is for now. We've been here before. To try and move those grid lines, in a more realistic sense. And at the same time, I have to say, teaching has never felt more rewarding than it does right now. To be, online with my students, trying to help them navigate this. If what I can do is to help their confidence level and for them to see their resilience, it's a huge boost. So I was not unhappy to get back into a routine, teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays. That routine has been helpful.
Wonderful. We're looking to each other, the students, the faculty, the alumni. We're one William & Mary community helping each other around the world. I encourage you all, whether you're watching the live today or the recording that we post online, to stay engaged, look to each other as support to each other, as expertise to one another, and open doors for each other however you can. And also, if you have ideas for future programming, we want to be creative. We want to be innovative with this. And so please do send us emails and go on. There's a form on that the virtual engagement opportunities page that you can submit ideas to us, and we'll work on exploring those. So again, thank you, Peter. Thank you, your entire family, for all you've been doing for William & Mary, and thank you for your expertise today. I'm sure this will be following you and listening to you in the future weeks ahead. Thank you for keeping our sort of outlook positive in whatever we can today. Thank you all for joining us, and have a good afternoon. Be well.
Thank you, Michael.